Hello everyone. This is a continuation video for the isolation of nucleic acid. In part 1 we have discussed about the isolation of genomic DNA, and now we are going to discuss about the isolation of plasmid DNA. So what is this plasmid and where can we find it? These plasmids are double stranded circular extra chromosomal genetic material. Okay, we are calling it as extra chromosomal genetic material. If you take a bacterial cell, we all know that there will be a genetic material, nothing but the DNA. We all know that DNA will be present in each and every cell of an organism. But when it comes to a bacterial cell, there will be a small circular double stranded DNA. Those are nothing but plasmids. Okay, these are the extra chromosomal genetic materials which are present in a cell cytoplasm. Those are nothing but the plasmids. Okay, and due to the presence of the plasmids, some bacteria may show a antibiotic resistance, and of course these plasmids can be used as a vectors in genetic engineering experiments. So if we can isolate this plasmid DNA, we can cut open this plasmid DNA and then we can insert our gene of interest over here. Okay, this is our gene of interest which may code for a hormone, for example insulin. We are interested in producing a huge amount of insulin and we want to clone this gene to make a huge amount of insulin. So for that reason we can use these plasmids as a vector, because these plasmids have a replicative property. They can undergo replication and they can replicate this inserted gene as well, which in turn gives a multiple copies of the gene of interest. Okay, simply we can say that these plasmids can be used as a vectors in gene cloning, and these are the small circular double stranded extra chromosomal genetic materials that are present in the cell of a bacteria. Same like the isolation of genomic DNA, here for the isolation of plasmid DNA, again we need to break this cell. That is, first step is cell lysis. Okay, where we are going to break the cell wall and the cell membrane so that the cytoplasmic contents will be exposed. And remember, here we are not interested in genomic DNA, here we are interested in isolating the plasmid DNA. So the first step is, as we are isolating this plasmid DNA from a bacterial source, we need to grow the bacteria. For example, take E. coli. You are going to inoculate E. coli into a LB broth, Luria bertani broth, and then you are going to incubate the culture overnight at 37 degrees centigrade. Once you provide all the optimum conditions for the growth of bacteria, so where the bacteria will undergo the division and it will grow in population, right? So after the overnight incubation, as you are interested in isolating the plasmid DNA from E. coli cells, what you are going to do is, you need to transfer 2 ml of culture. So before you transfer culture into an Eppendorf tube, you need to check the OD, and the OD should be around 0.8 to 1. When you measure the absorbance at 600 nanometers using a spectrophotometer. So once the cell density is achieved, then you can proceed with the experiment. So what you are going to do? You are going to transfer 2 ml of E. coli culture into an Eppendorf tube, sterile Eppendorf tube. So make sure you sterilize everything, that is the Eppendorf tubes and the tips, everything you need to maintain a sterile conditions, because if any contamination of DNAs, your compound will get degraded. So you are expecting a pure DNA at the end of the experiment, but if the solution is contaminated with DNAs, that DNAs will degrade the DNA, so that you can't get the expected DNA at the end. So for that reason you need to maintain a sterile conditions. So this 2 ml of culture which is in the Eppendorf tube is to be kept in a centrifuge. The reason is you are going to harvest the cells. So you are going to centrifuge at 10,000 rpm for 5 minutes, or you can go with 8,000 rpm for 10 minutes. If you reduce the rpm, you can just extend the time. Whatever, based on your convenience, you can plan the experiment. Just keep it in a centrifuge at 10,000 rpm for 5 minutes. Then based on the density, all the cells will settle at the bottom forming a pellet. Okay, when you observe the Eppendorf tube, you can see a pellet that is attached to a wall of a Eppendorf tube. So this is a pellet which you got as a part of harvesting the cells. Next, what you are going to do is you are going to resuspend this pellet in resuspension buffer. See here in the protocol we are going to use a different solutions like resuspension buffer, lysis buffer, neutralization buffer. I'll tell you the reason also. Listen carefully here. We are resuspending the pellet in a resuspension buffer where we are going to add 200 microliters of it. Okay. And this resuspension buffer is a combination of tris HCl, EDTA, and also you can add 100 micrograms per ml of RNAs. And this resuspension buffer is a combination of tris HCl with a pH of 8. So the reason for using tris HCl is to maintain a pH, and then it contains EDTA also. EDTA here acts as a chelating agent because here this EDTA is going to reduce divalent cations. The role of EDTA will be same that we have already studied when we discussed about the isolation of genomic DNA. I am just repeating again. Please listen carefully. Here the role of EDTA is it acts as a chelating agent and it will reduce the concentration of divalent cations so that it is going to destabilize the cell membrane. That is what we are expecting, right? We are supposed to break the cell wall and the cell membrane. And moreover, the other role of EDTA is by reducing these divalent cations, it can also inhibit the activity of nucleases. What are nucleases? Enzymes which degrade the nucleic acid, whether it could be DNA or RNA. Right? DNases will degrade DNA and RNases will degrade RNA. If DNases were present in the solution, then your plasmid DNA will be degraded. Okay? To avoid that problem, EDTA will inhibit the activity of nucleases, because these nucleases will require these divalent cations, that is Mg2+ for their activity. Here the Mg2+ will act as a cofactor for the enzymatic activity of nucleases, but the EDTA will reduce this concentration of divalent cations and thereby it is inhibiting the activity of nucleases. That is the reason we are going to include EDTA and tris HCl in a resuspension buffer. Hope you understand. Here tris is used to maintain a pH of 8. Next, we are also going to add 100 μg per ml of RNase. The reason for using RNase A is to inhibit the RNA, because if the RNA is present, that is going to contaminate our sample. We are interested in isolating a pure plasmid DNA. So we need to eliminate cell debris, protein and RNA. So that is the reason we are going to add RNase A to degrade RNA. And the next step is, after the addition of resuspension buffer, what you are going to do in the next step is you have to add a lysis buffer. Lysis means breakdown. Here again you are going to break the cell wall and the cell membrane. How much you are going to add? You are going to add 250 microliters of lysis buffer. That is a combination of 0.2 normal NaOH and 1% SDS along with the combination of lysozyme. I already told you the role of lysozyme. The bacterial cell wall, which is having a thick peptidoglycan layer, though it have a thin peptidoglycan layer in case of gram-negative bacteria, if you look into the structure of peptidoglycan, it will have NAM and NAG sugar units. NAM stands for N-acetylmuramic acid and NAG stands for N-acetylglucosamine. These are the alternate sugar units which are present in the structure of a peptidoglycan layer, and these sugar units are linked together by
beta 1,4 linkage,
and this lysozyme is going to act on that linkage and going to break the bacterial cell wall. Okay, that is the combination of the lysis buffer. So the three basic steps for the isolation of nucleic acids is cell lysis. So here the first step is achieved, right? Once you add the lysis buffer, you have to mix it thoroughly using a pipette. One indication here is that once you add a lysis buffer and you mix the solution, you should get a clear and a viscous solution. Okay, here after you get a pellet, and after the addition of the resuspension buffer, you will get a turbid solution. But after you add a lysis buffer, your solution should be clear and viscous. Okay, after that, what you are going to add? The next step, you are going to add neutralization buffer, which is a combination of potassium acetate with a pH of 8. So here, after the addition of the neutralization buffer, again you are going to mix the solution. Just you cap the Eppendorf tube and then you invert the tube gently. Just you do it for around 10 times. I told you here the activity of RNase, activity of EDTA and the activity of tris. Here also, after the addition of lysis buffer, what the lysosome is going to do? It is going to break the cell wall. And moreover, what is the role of SDS and NaOH here? And the sodium dodecyl sulfate role is to dissolve the membrane lipids, that it is going to break the cell membrane. And moreover, the role of NaOH here is, that is the sodium hydroxide, what it will do is, it is going to denature the chromosomal DNA. Means the double stranded DNA is going to convert into a single stranded DNA, which makes it easy for us to separate the plasmid DNA from the chromosomal DNA. And coming to the next step, that is we are going to add a neutralization buffer, and the neutralization buffer is a combination of potassium acetate. Here we are going to use an acetic acid solution to maintain the pH, and moreover this potassium acetate will go and bind with the chromosomal DNA. Okay, when this potassium acetate go and binds with the chromosomal DNA, it makes us easy for the separation from the plasmid DNA. Here we are going to get a plasmid DNA, not the chromosomal DNA. To separate the chromosomal DNA from the plasmid DNA, we are going to use a neutralization buffer here, and the quantity is 350 microliters. What you are going to do after the addition of neutralization buffer? You have to gently mix the solution by inverting the Eppendorf tube. Do not apply more pressure. You just gently invert the tube several times or until you get a precipitate. Here, after the addition of lysis buffer, you should get a clear and a viscous solution, because there you are going to break the cell by using lysozyme, NaOH and sodium dodecyl sulfate combination. But when it comes to the addition of neutralization buffer, here after the addition of the neutralization buffer and inverting the tubes, you should observe the tube where you can see the formation of a precipitate. And then here again, to this precipitate solution, we are going to add RNase, and the reason is to degrade the RNA, that is to remove the contamination of RNA. And the next step is we need to add an equal volume of phenol chloroform. See here, you need to check the volume of the solution before the addition of phenol and chloroform. If you have 1 ml of your solution, then you need to add 1 ml of phenol chloroform. If you have 0.5 ml of your solution, then you need to add 0.5 ml of phenol chloroform. And both should be added in the ratio of 1:1. So your solution and the phenol and chloroform should be equal, that is in the ratio of 1:1. So here the phenol is a polar solvent and the chloroform is a non-polar organic solvent. So here after the addition of phenol and chloroform and after proper mixing, you need to again centrifuge the solution. See clearly here, after the addition of the equal volume of phenol and chloroform, you need to mix the solution by inverting the tube, and then you have to go for the centrifugation. After centrifugation, when you observe the Eppendorf tube, based on the density gradient, you can observe two phases. One is the organic phase and the other one is the aqueous phase. So the bottom one is the organic phase and the upper one is the aqueous phase. Okay, and the DNA, due to the density, it will be here in this interphase. Okay, and this step of phenol and chloroform extraction should be repeated twice, or you can go for thrice. The reason is that to purify the DNA, that is to remove the contaminants. So again, after the addition of phenol and chloroform, after proper mixing, again you are going to centrifuge the solution at 10,000 rpm for 5 minutes. And the next step is, after the centrifugation, as I told you, you can observe two phases, and you don't need any organic phase because all the cell debris, proteins, denatured proteins will be left in the organic phase, but your DNA will be here in this upper phase. So you need to collect this aqueous phase into a fresh test tube. Okay, so after the collection of a aqueous phase into a fresh Eppendorf tube, what you are going to do? You are going to add 2 volumes of ethanol. For example, if your solution is 1 ml, you are going to add 2 ml of ice cold ethanol, which is of 100% ethanol. And if your solution is, say for example 2 ml, you are going to double the quantity, that is you are going to add 4 ml of 100% ethanol. And after you add ethanol, just gently mix the solution again. So what happens here with the addition of alcohol, ethanol? Plasmid DNA will get precipitated. Okay, here we already separated the chromosomal DNA from the plasmid DNA. Okay, so all the cell debris will be settled at the bottom of the organic phase by the centrifugation, and we are going to collect only the supernatant, that is the aqueous phase, into a fresh Eppendorf tube, and when you treat it with the alcohol, that causes the precipitation. Okay, so this is the second step of precipitation, whereby your DNA is getting precipitated after you treat with the alcohol, that is ethanol. Or you can also use isopropanol instead of ethanol, where you can add around 0.8 to 1 ml. So after the addition of ethanol and proper mixing, what you are going to do? Again you have to centrifuge it. You can spin at a maximum speed, or you can spin at 8000 rpm for 10 minutes, or you can spin at 10,000 rpm for 5 minutes. After spinning, what you are going to observe is a small plasmid DNA will deposit at the bottom. So the pellet will stick at the edge of the Eppendorf tube. So you have to collect that pellet, because that pellet is containing a plasmid DNA which you are interested in. So before you collect the pellet, you have to wash the pellet. So washing is to be done with 1 ml of 70% ethanol, ice cold ethanol. Okay, just prepare a 70% ethanol. Take 70 ml of ethanol and add 30 ml of distilled water, that gives you a 70% ethanol. So from that 70% ice cold ethanol, you are going to add 1 ml to the DNA, plasmid DNA pellet, and then resuspend the pellet in the ethanol. That is nothing but you are giving a wash. Okay, after resuspending, again you need to separate the plasmid DNA so that you can restore it for the further studies. So for that reason, what you are going to do? Again you go for a centrifugation. Again after the centrifugation, you can see a small pellet attached to the Eppendorf tube. You discard the ethanol. Don't leave your plasmid DNA in ethanol, it may degrade the DNA. So for that reason, you have to discard the solution, leaving the pellet in the Eppendorf tube. Then that pellet is to be air dried. See, for example, this is the Eppendorf tube and this is your plasmid DNA, which is a pellet seen at the bottom of the Eppendorf tube. Now you are going to remove the ethanol. So here there will be ethanol. So during this washing process, if any leftover contaminants is present along with your plasmid DNA, that will be eliminated here in this step of purification. So you have to remove this supernatant. Just decant the supernatant and then you gently tap it onto a tissue paper. So the any leftover fluid will be removed, and then open the cap and then leave it like that in a room temperature so that all the ethanol will get evaporated and your pellet will be left in the Eppendorf tube, which means you are going to air dry the pellet. So after air drying, what you are going to do, you have to resuspend the pellet in 50 microliters of TE buffer or 50 microliters of water, and that water should be free from DNases. This is how you isolate the plasmid DNA from a bacterial cell. And if you want to check the purity of your DNA, you can check the absorbance at a wavelength of 260 nanometers as well as at 280 nanometers. Then take a ratio of absorbance at 260 nanometers by absorbance at 280 nanometers, and the absorbance ratio, if it is at a range of 1.8 approximately, that indicates that the DNA is in pure form. Above that ratio of 1.8 or below that ratio of 1.8 indicates that still the contaminants were present. This is all about the isolation of plasmid DNA. Please check the part 3 for the isolation of RNA.